Today we're checking out the easy 4x4 middle panel roof rack holder in black for the 2021 and newer Bronco 4-doors. If you are the kind of Bronco owner who actually takes advantage of the removable roof panels but hates figuring out where to put them once they're off, this is a really smart solution. It adds useful roof storage without giving the Bronco a bulky look and helps make the whole open air setup a lot more practical. This setup is really all about making your Bronco more versatile. The big draw is that it lets you store the mid-top panels directly on top of the roof, which is exactly why somebody would want a product like this instead of just tossing the panels in the cargo area or leaving them at home in the garage. That gives you a lot more flexibility on the trail or on a road trip because you can remove those front panels, slide the mid panels into the rack, and keep the truck adventure ready without giving up interior cargo space. It's also part of the full flip top and roof rack system, so it makes sense for somebody building a more functional roof setup instead of just adding a random storage piece. Another huge benefit is that it supports up to 200 pounds of evenly distributed weight without compromising roof seals or aerodynamics. So this is not just a panel holder, it's also a real low-profile roof rack solution. The wind tunnel tested aerodynamic design is another nice feature because it helps keep the setup quieter and slicker than a bulkier roof rack. When it comes to the construction on this, you are getting premium aluminum panels with a textured black powder coat finish. That aluminum build is a big part of the appeal here because it gives you the strength without adding a ton of weight, while the powder coat is going to help fight corrosion and keep the rack looking good over time. It also uses heavy-duty commercial-grade aluminum, which helps support a strong and dependable install, so you know it's going to be solid once it goes on the roof. As far as the pricing goes on this, it's coming in right in the low $500 price range. That definitely puts it above a basic accessory piece, but that price makes a lot of sense because you're getting a specialized Bronco-specific roof solution that stores removable panels and adds usable roof capacity. And it also keeps a low-profile aerodynamic design instead of just being a simple rack basket. When it comes to the install on this one, it's going to get rated a 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, and you can have this job done in just 1 hour of your time. Now let's see exactly how this install process goes with a quick video from one of our ExtremeTerrain customers.
This was a very simple install, and all of the tools that you need did come with the package. You have your Allen wrench, and then you have a wrench with a 10mm and 13mm hex head here. I did use, and I would recommend using whatever ratchet you may have with a 10mm and 13mm socket. Just for ease of use, it lets you spin your Allen wrench a little bit easier. And then you do still need the tool that was provided. You need to be able to get into the tight corners that are in the back of the actual bracket itself.
So we have everything laid out. This is everything that came in the box. Pretty easy to see how all of this is going to come together. You have your side rails here. These are obviously each piece of the rack, and then this is the front. You can tell they're all a pretty fairly heavy gauge steel. Everything is really solid. You can actually even see each one of the pieces here are very clearly marked. They say driver's side, front. You've got several things here that are denoting what the actual pieces are. Without that, it would be pretty difficult to tell because they all look very similar. So the first thing that we're going to do is take a look here at our instruction manual, and you can see that they've given you a good visual breakdown of what you are trying to accomplish with the full build. And then the next thing is just broken up by piece. So we're going to start by assembling the looks like the passenger side rail here, and then moving into the driver's side rail is what looks like it's next. So the first piece is connecting this plastic block to the passenger side rail. They came pre-assembled. You can see here in the diagram, they are broken apart and in individual pieces. You do have to take it apart in order to put it into the rail. So I have done that here, and you have a plastic washer and a metal washer that go on a specific way. Inside of this plastic block, here is a nut
And as I've been looking at this, it looks like this plastic block is supposed to be pushed forward. I could see this becoming a problem for someone in that you have an additional hole here, and that would put it kind of in line with the end of the rail. It's very obvious to me seeing this next photo that this actually falls into this long ridge here, this long hole. So you will see me now very quickly try and assemble this. But effectively, you want this to be able to slide. Trying to get my order correct on plastic versus metal. Trying to keep that nut inside of that plastic block. Yeah, you do have a little more wiggle room towards the back of this hole. And I would imagine you also do not want to over tighten this because it looks like, as I said in the images, you want it to be able to slide forward and backwards. So I've just kind of hand tightened it there. It is still a little tight, but I can pull it. Okay, so I have everything here to assemble the passenger side rail based on this image that is here in the instructions. One of the things that I am like really adamant about is kind of like dry fitting everything and making sure that everything is lined up before I start the install. The graphic here is really great. It gives you an idea of which hole each screw or bolt is going to be going through, and then it also lets you know which pieces are needed. It doesn't directly state how many of your nuts and bolts you're going to need. You almost have to infer that from the image, which is fine. The only thing that I did notice in the instructions and what you should be careful of if you're doing this install is that you do not have any markings on the bags of bolts themselves. So I had to go and look, as you're assembling this passenger side rail, and I'm going to assume it's going to be the same on the driver's side, you're going to have two different bolts that are being used here. So your nuts and washers are going to be the same, but you're using two different size bolts. Because it calls out the two different size bolts that are being used based on what's in the front and what's in the back, but it doesn't actually say it on the bag, I had to go back to the first page and just make sure that I saw how long each bolt was and the number, like the quantity of bolts that I received. So very easy for me to see. Your longer bolt is what's going to be up front and your shorter bolt is what is going in the back. So with all that being said, I've laid out each piece. As I said before, each one of these pieces has a part number as well as the description on it. Really, really great thing that they've done here because it helps me sit down and see which piece I need to be putting in which spot. And then I just took my time and went through and made sure that each piece was laid out the exact same way that it is in the image. So with all of that being said, we are going to get started on assembling this rail. Like I said, the quantity of bolts that you need is not incredibly clear until you take a look at the image. I need 4 in the back, and then I need 2 up front. And then what I now know with 6 bolts is I need 6 washers and 6 nuts. So these nuts seem to be my 13 millimeter size. I'm gonna throw that on the 1/4 inch ratchet here. Put my 13 millimeter nut in, throw a bolt into a washer. We're going to start assembling. So this is the spacer piece. Sorry, not a spacer piece. This piece is not delineated left or right. It looks like there's 2 pieces that are identical. So it took me a second just to make sure that I was not doing anything incorrect here, but this is exactly where this one needs to be on this passenger side rail. It is going through the top hole here in the rail. So you can see I've got some bottom holes. It's going into these 2 top holes here. So that finger tightened, we will the holes on this are a little bit wider than the bolts. It feels like they've got some play. I don't think I'm going to tighten this all the way down just because with that amount of play inside of it, it feels like it needs to sit somewhere probably inside of one of these cross members. So I am just going to leave it as is. So with the ratchet,
much easier for me to just stick this Allen wrench inside of the head of the bolt and then put the nut in. Still a little bit of play in that piece so that if I needed to, I could move it around based on what I need in the future. All right, what you've got here on this next piece that's starting at the rear, working our way to the front, is still using the small bolts here, and it looks to be going through two pieces. Our bolts will sit on the outside, just like this one did. Get my washers on. And this one as well looks as if it's got a little bit of play. I can tell that what this item actually is bolts into the little ridge that is in your hard top. You can see it's got a lip and it's got a soft facing here that prevents this from probably rubbing against the top and making any kind of mark. And this lip looks to be something that fits inside of the Bronco. Just double checking that the fitment is all correct here. Reading our instructions. And again, I'm going to be just a little bit hesitant. I'm not sure at the end of this build if I'm doing the right thing here, but anytime that I have an opening that allows a bolt a little bit of play, I'm just gonna err on the side of caution. I'm gonna leave everything, just marginally tighter than hand tightened. And the hope would be that we can come back and tighten everything at the end here. One thing I'm a big fan of doing is basically if you do have markings like this, if you ever built furniture, you get like little letters like A and B. With this, I really enjoy just like peeling these off and putting them beside in the manual, the part that's associated with it. Just something that I do because it helps me go back and verify that, oh yeah, I did put that part on that part and did it at the correct stage. Okay, so your spacer here, I was having some trouble getting it to fit with the spacer oriented down towards the car. So you can see this is the top of my rail, this is the bottom of my rail, this is where it attaches to the vehicle. I had the spacer oriented this way. It looks to me that this spacer should be oriented with this hole facing away from the vehicle. Okay, so I struggled with the orientation of this piece, the passenger front top. It's not extremely clear in the image as you're installing. What you should know is that the label here, this square hole, will be, again, just much like the spacer, facing away from the vehicle. Wouldn't you know it, with this piece on the front top here, I'm actually aiming to go up using the tool provided. My ratchet is just a little bit too bulky to get into that crevice. As you can see, I'm just basically dropping this tool on top of the nut here, and I will just have to tighten, unfortunately, with the Allen wrench. And that is our entire front rail assembled there. It is all kind of loose enough for me to be able to play with it once it goes on top of the vehicle and once I know kind of where everything needs to be. So now we're just doing the same exact thing with the driver's side here. All of the pieces are exactly the same. The driver's side looks to be done the exact same way with the same mirrored pieces as the passenger side. So again, here we're looking at this back hole. We're Sorry, go back. So we're looking now at the rear driver's side. And tighten our nuts. I did flip ahead in the pages and I was able to see that hand tightening these brackets is the right move. And once we move onto the top of the vehicle, these will get tightened down in order to basically secure it in those slots that are in the hard top. Might tighten that in just a hair too much. Don't have any wiggle room. Back it out. It sits behind in those top holes. Moving a little too quickly here, and I missed exactly my order of operations. Where my spacer goes, it goes after the bracket. And then the top bracket, again, just making sure that my orientation is perfect. Looks like I've got my square piece on top, and then this bolts right in there. Hand tighten our washers, and then we should be done with the driver's side here. With the driver's side. This is a little cumbersome with just one person here. The ability to hold all of this together while also being able to get your Allen wrench and your ratchet on the nut and bolt is just a little bit difficult. See if I can actually get this on this time. I'm doing my best not to get out my deep socket. Just flip it over and use the Allen wrench. A little tighter than the others. Sometimes those the nuts that have the little locking rings in them, or like the thread lock at the bottom of the nut. Sometimes, man, those things get extremely tight to get through. That's what I'm experiencing right now. Again, just verifying as I rip these off that they match the pieces that were called out in the instructions. So now we are actually attaching the cross members here to the side rails. So I still have my driver's side here. It says passenger side, but you're just doing both sides. The one thing to make sure of here is that the groove side of your cross member stays up, facing away from the vehicle. You can see there's 3 cross members. They will go into these holes here, 1, 2, and 3, and then your back piece sits back here. So again, this would be much easier with someone else to kind of stabilize the piece and allow you to line the bolt up. Unfortunately, I'm doing this by myself, so just have to find the right way to kind of get this cross member aligned. There we are, got it hand threaded. The other one in, and before we kind of get it close to hand tightened, because again, I'm going to leave everything just fairly loose until it's on top of the vehicle. But in order to get it there, I would imagine that once these are aligned, the opposite side is going to be much easier to slide in. Just take your Allen wrench, not over tighten. Okay, so as you can see, you've got the easy 4x4 logo. Here's your back piece. This is going to run across just like your cross members are. The difference with this piece is that it is going to require 2 nuts that go kind of on the inside of this piece, just right in here. And then your bolts are going through in the same way. The cross members had their own internal threaded nuts, and this piece, for whatever reason, just does not have that some future. I've reached another scenario that's a little more difficult to use my ratchet. So again, the provided tool coming in handy. Getting this back piece on is just a little tight. I think on the other side, what I'll do is probably start with the back piece because the cross member is just a little bit in the way for me to be able to tighten all of this with a ratchet. I do have some concerns with everything being just hand tightened and not extremely tight at the moment. With going on top of the vehicle, I think some of these are going to be pretty difficult to access and tighten. If I'm having a difficult time doing it here on the ground, I can imagine I'm going to face a much tougher time once it's up in the air. All right, so I've moved into the floor just because this was getting to be a little bit too bulky to sit on top of my work surface. I also flipped it over. You can see the ridges on the cross members are facing down now. The reason that I've done that is because I was having such a hard time on the other piece accessing this back corner here. I think that being able to visually see it top down now instead of kind of working under the surface is going to help me a lot. So we'll get on adding the passenger side here to all of these cross members and the back piece, and then we are moving straight into putting the top on the Bronco. Yep, much easier to work upside down on this piece. I don't know if you're extremely visual like I am, but it helps me to work on the piece that I'm working on in the same orientation that the instruction manual shows you, just so I can see where everything is laid out and make sure that I'm doing it the way that it looks on the paper. I think in this scenario, this is just the better way to do this, is to flip it upside down. Yeah, I can actually see the hole here is a small machining imperfection, and it is preventing me from feeding this bolt in. I'm probably just going to try and get it to bite by pushing on it a little bit, and I think what we're going to end up having to do is use a little bit of elbow grease to get that thing starting to thread and breaking through. That first little thread is bent on the inside of this cross member. And unfortunately, it looks like the same issue on another cross member here. So I don't know if you can see if the angle of the camera is actually capturing this, but my bolt is going in a little bit sideways. And again, it's because that first thread is kind of bent in. What will happen is it will skip that thread, and then we will kind of self-machine it with the bolt. Once it pops through, I'll be able to just tighten it down like I did this other one. So as you can see, I have backed the Bronco into the garage and now going to try and put the fully assembled piece up on the top, get everything in place and then tighten it up. As I mentioned, if you're a Bronco owner, you likely know you have these little ridges here in the modular hardtop. I believe that this was designed for everything to kind of slide in loosely and hand tightened as we did. And then once my pieces are inside of these little slots on the hardtop, tightening everything up should lock it in place. The instructions suggest that you have a friend come and help you put the top on. I do not think that the rack is heavy enough to justify needing another person. It's just that you could scratch it as you lift it over. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a blanket tonight to basically set it on top of the top, get that on the rack on top of the blanket, and then slide everything in place. I'll remove the blanket once it is in place. And I think this is gonna protect the top and give me the ability to slide it smoothly without having to have additional sets of hands here. So I will get us all set up and get our top covered. And then the hope would be that I can very easily just lay the wrap on top of the blanket and slide it back. Okay, so as you can see, everything is in place. It is a little loose, you can kind of hear it jingle and jangle, but I do think it is sturdy enough for me to be able to just set it. And like I said, slide. I'm not grabbing my blanket as I intentionally. Yep, there we go. Again, not heavy enough to really justify the hands. I think it's all just about not scratching the surface of the top. Just verify that I am still on top of the blanket before I continue to slide. We look to be just over that spot here on this side, driver's side. Everything should fall directly into those slots. I'm fully seated on the driver's side, but it looks to be about an inch or so off. So we're gonna read the instructions, just see how we are meant to fully stretch this. I might have to loosen everything a little bit, and this may be where those additional spacers come into play. So I have confirmed that what I'm gonna have to do is come back and use these spacers in certain spaces. Basically, what the top does is it clamps on. So you have a clamp that sits on the inside, which I'll show in a moment. And then your clamp that is on the other side does go into those slots like I mentioned. The problem is, even with hand tightening and not fully cranking down those nuts and bolts, there's still not enough play for that clamp to fully open, and then you tighten everything back up and close it. So I've got to go back through, loosen a few of these up, and I'll give you a little bit of a view of that, but as I loosen them, everything should settle, and then I'll tighten everything back down.
So as mentioned, this is the clamp on the inner piece. This is looking at the back passenger side here. This clamp is not open enough, even though it's seated in the right place, it is not open enough to allow this to fully fall into this gap. So what I need to do is just loosen these two, allow it to fall in, and then tighten everything back up. I would imagine that I'll have to use a spacer here in order to get this all the way out enough to let it sit and then tighten it and have it all be flush instead of angled out, I believe is what those spacers are intended to help. I'm still just opening this enough to allow this bracket to fully open and get into that slot. It looks to be there. So now I'll hand tighten this back close enough to just grab, and we should be able to move back into tightening it now that it's grabbing. I don't believe I need a spacer for this one just because it is really tight and really close. What I'm realizing is even though it's in there, I may have to get the other side kind of opened up and flush with the roof before this one will be, pushed that direction enough. I think we are very close. Just need to do a little bit more here. And maybe as we tighten all of the bolts that go across into our cross members, we'll also see everything tighten up. So I was absolutely right that I would have to use a couple of additional spacers. The tool yet again coming in handy here for this hard to reach area. But once everything associated with these clamps got loosened, I was able to then fit everything on top of the top, and all of the ridges kind of locked in place. And then I just used spacers to try and figure out how do I get everything really tight and snug with no gaps and no weird tolerances or anything like that. And what you're witnessing now is my last piece being tightened, And this clamp is fully seated on top of this ridge in the top, and the other side is just completely locked in as well. So basically what you've done is you've opened this clamp, you've let everything fall on, and then you've closed the clamp. And now I'm gonna go around and just make sure that all of my cross members are really tight, but already just with the side rails locked in, everything up here is snug. I did have to play a little bit with these brackets, as you know, I hand tightened before and everything was a little loose. What I ended up having to do to get everything level was kind of experiment with my back corners. So I would have to loosen one side a little bit, lift the entire rack, and then tighten everything back. So you may have to play a little bit with your leveling here. Just basically go around, work the bolts, move the rack around, and make sure that you get it where you want it before you come back and tighten everything else up. While we were up here on the top, we saw this plastic block go into the rail earlier in, and we have this fun little handle here. I've now discovered as I played with it that what this is it's meant to lock the rack and your back top into your actual cross members here underneath, like the roll cage that's underneath the vehicle. So these will just receive back into the top, into the rack when you are not using it. But when you do take this middle section of the hardtop off and then set it here in place, what you will do is loosen the bolts that are up here, run this plastic piece down, set it on top of the roll cage, tighten it back down. It just gives you that extra layer of security with the top being off in the T-tops and in front, in the middle, and then it allows you to lock your back portion in place. Definitely make sure you come back and tighten each one of these bolts that you left really loose in order to get everything fitted on. I mean, getting all of these tight is what's going to keep the rack really strong and sturdy, and make sure that your brackets here don't actually come loose, and you know, you lose the rack and whatever else you have in the rack. So just all the way around, making sure that you're pulling everything into these side rails and getting everything locked in.
That's gonna wrap up our review and install of the Easy 4x4 middle panel roof rack holder in black for the 2021 and newer Bronco 4-doors. And for all things Bronco, keep it right here at Extreme Terrain.